So the idea of the book, I have a friend, her name is Rafael García, and uh, she has been working with youth of color for the past 10, 11 years, I want to say, through Barrio Writers, and that's how I met her. And I really identified with uh, being able to express myself on paper. And she just was so encouraging to teenagers. She never talked down to us. I was around 16 when I met her, and we did a summer program, the first summer program in SanTana. And my sister was there, and then I made all of these friends from different schools, different areas of Orange County. And she was just so approachable, and she handed us our first like books with like Chicana writers, and um, it was just such a great introduction into seeing ourselves as Latinas, as Chicanas, like reflected on the page, to see things like even using mama in a poem that was in English. It just gave us a feeling of like, oh yeah, we're on the page, like I can identify with this. And after going to college, I came back and I was just really interested in taking form, taking the writing a little bit further. And with Breath of Fire and coming back and being an ensemble member, I was able to write plays, and so it just seemed like a natural progression of then integrating the plays and the monologues that I'd written, and then publishing that with the poetry that I was writing. I knew that I had to make this book when I could see a theme or like themes coming together. Uh, I had been working with Teatro Productions based out of Los Angeles, and they're mostly like people of color centered theater ensemble that goes and works with different communities. And I was getting a lot of experience working with formerly incarcerated folks, working with houseless folks in LA, working with unions, and just doing really like ground level like acting and playing. And in one of the scenarios we had to make up a song, and we together we made a song that it was like from the roots to the core to the heart to the head, from the roots to the core to the heart to the head. And then it was like a call and response, and that for some reason just really resonated with me. Like it, I just kept repeating it in my head over and over and over again, and it stuck with me. And it just so happened that like I had all of these papers, so all these poems, all these things, and I thought, well, I don't know if I have all the components for just like roots or just to talk about my ancestors and my lineage. I don't know that much about them. And I don't I want to honor these love poems that I have, and these things about like relationships, but I don't want my book to be about that. And I have all these things about like the social justice and the anger and depression and anxiety, but I don't want to get just stuck there. And then I had all of these poems about like affirmation and very more spiritually connected and more in the kind of work that I'm working on right now, as I speak myself, that I find really healing for me to like kind of say out loud and to speak. And so I was just like, oh, roots, core, heart, and head, like the crown. And I was like, oh, it just kind of came together in that way. And I was like, I can make it my own thing. It doesn't have to fit a box of like, well, there's never been a book like that before. Like that's when I realized like, oh, I can do something and I can do it my way and I can make it different. So I think as humans, I think people say like there's two needs: to be heard and to be seen. And I think art is a really great way to be a mirror to one another. And what I want folks to get out of this book is how, even though you may not understand what my life circumstances were, there's actually some poems that are just in Spanish. And I didn't want to touch those poems and try to change them. But there are a lot of poems that are translated that are in English and in Spanish. And so I think it's a space to listen, and then also to inspire the reader to dig deep into their own roots. I think something happens when we don't have the privilege or the access to know where we come from, for better or for worse, the consequences of our ancestors, what is where they came from, that it's this loss of home, or like this loss of like identity that a lot of folks don't have access to, and it's this privilege that I have. And so even the idea of just like, well, I know one uncle that would say this story, or like investigating for folks to investigate their own roots or to investigate where they come from, um, can be very grounding, and in that way can hold space for more, can hold space for learning more about yourself, having more compassion for others, feeling like this connection. We've all felt depressed, we've all felt anxious, we've all felt like a, with a lack of identity, or like confused about our identity, or do we belong to this or that. And so I think if folks can get that from the book, I do dedicate it to survivors of violence. So I center survivals of systemic violence, of interpersonal violence, wars and stuff like that, because I do feel like, as someone that has survived like a level of violence and trauma, that it is my responsibility to, as a survivor, and not and changing the narrative of like the victim, or like people feeling sorry for me, and saying, well, we also have a voice. And hopefully folks who feel that feel empowered to also share their voice. It was important for me for it to be bilingual because a lot of my family mostly speaks Spanish, and my grandmother actually doesn't know how to read or write. And so language is actually a really powerful thing, and it's something that I don't take for granted. I mean, that, if anything, that's the catalyst to why I write. Uh, our stories haven't been documented. The history of my ancestors and my family surviving in Orange County, and then how I've sort of kind of been more disruptive in the way that I've decided to make art, and decided to go against the grain, perhaps, or not assimilate completely. Um, words are powerful, and in the case of um, bio writers, and now Sarah Rafael Garcia working on LibroMobile, which is a bilingual like bookstore that they're still functioning right now, like online. She says that the first books that go are in Spanish, because so many people want to read books in Spanish. There's a huge need for that. And as someone that has tried to um, understand the complexity of, like, even Spanish was a colonized, like a language that was used to colonize folks. And then there's a little bit of Nahuatl there in there, because my grandparents spoke that as well. um Language is just a thing. Like, we speak English in a different way that people in Texas speak English. The way that families in mixed languages like speak English, and so why not make it something that is complex, that is how the way that I would speak to someone, the way that I would kind of interpret things, um, and then like using the different parts of the brain. California, especially, and I think the U.S. is it's predominantly like it's. I think people are coming to the understanding that it's not just English that folks speak. There's so many other languages that are out there, and some poems just because I have access and I have the ability to speak both languages, is some poems just come out in Spanish, and I have to honor that they're just as valuable and just as important without using italics, without using them in quotes, that they are as valuable for a reader as the English language. So you can find me at anataliavallez.com, ANATALIAVALLEZ.com. I have a YouTube page, youtube.com/it's Natalie, ITS NATALIE. You can find me at Anatalia Vallez on Instagram and Twitter. Yeah, you can find on my shop, on my website, you can find the book. There's some interviews that are hopefully going to be coming out soon, and I want to be able to share some excerpts of the book via like Instagram video or on YouTube, depending on people and the way that they're able to access. And yeah, just copies of my book will be coming. I ran out, but I will be receiving a new batch, and I think it's just a little bit slower with the postal service. But I mean, it's been quite an experience, and I'm really excited. I mean, follow Breath of Fire too, LibroMobile, all the folks that I've been shouting out throughout this too. Support your local library or bookstore. So support local vendors, folks that are still doing the work in your community, because we all need love and support right now, and to feel that like we're here for one another.